Hey there, horror fans. At least I'm assuming you are, and welcome back to 31 Days of Horror, and we are on day 17. And today I checked out a movie called The Lighthouse. This has shown up in a whole lot of memes. That's really the majority of what I know about it, is that they use it for meme content. It stars Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, and I'm sure you've seen the memes. This movie came out in 2019. So it is, a few years old. It's 5 years old now. But I checked it out because, like I said, I've seen the memes and I was curious. And I've been curious for quite a while. I just really haven't had the time to check it out. Like I said, nobody in my family really likes horror. So if I ever want to watch anything that has the potential to be horror, I always have to find time to watch it on my own. So I checked this out, and it's difficult to give a review of this one, because this is probably the most polarizing movie that I watched so far, this month, because it's bonkers from beginning to end. And my biggest takeaway from this movie is that this movie is a film teacher's dream. I took film courses when I was in college, and at some point, in my youth, I wanted to be a director. I wanted to be a screenwriter. Hollywood was where I wanted to be. So when I was in college, I did take some film courses. And this is right up the alley of something that a film teacher would just love to pick apart with a class. And when I say that, I don't mean that from a critical standpoint if anybody did anything wrong. I mean, there is so much imagery and technique and interesting film aspects of this movie to discuss, even beyond the plot. Like, you don't even have to talk about the plot, and you could spend hours discussing this movie. So it'll be interesting to see if my video on this ends up being shorter than my video about Escape Room, the PG-13 horror movie, or if I can kind of, reel things in a little bit. So the premise of this movie is that there is a remote island area. It's very rocky, so they call it the Rock for, this rock. You're out here on this rock for the majority of the movie. Very small remote island with a lighthouse and a like foghorn and a little house attached to the lighthouse itself for the caretakers. And Willem Dafoe is a gentleman who we assume has been a long-term caretaker, and so he knows the ropes. And Robert Pattinson has been newly hired as his assistant on this island, and so he's dropped off on the island, and they're the only two people there. There's no town to walk to, there's no mainland. You're on the island for a month, and then in a month they'll come and pick you up and bring provisions. And then, so Robert Pattinson's supposed to work there for a month. And it is a very, when I say it's a slow movie, it's not slow in that it's boring. It's slow in that it takes its time. There is not expositional dialogue. There is not much telling you what's going on. In fact, nobody really speaks for a lot of the movie. And then it's kind of brought up naturally of like, you don't talk much. And a lot of this is imagery based. It's camera angles. And the whole thing is in black and white. And so you don't have color highlights, because movies like to use color highlights. They'll make something a little bit brighter so it pops out to you, or they use lighting to kind of shade colors or accentuate certain things. They'll use lighting for neons and to kind of express emotions. And so it can be very difficult when all you have to work with is black and white and gray. and the lighting in that. And a lot of the lighting in this film is dictated by the weather, which is significant because it's a lighthouse. And everything in this movie seems incredibly deliberate. Um, the set is both sparse, but it's also cluttered and dirty. The island is remote and empty, but all of the shots are very close up, so it doesn't give you a feeling of this like vast aloneness. It's a very claustrophobic being watched kind of feeling that you get. And that just has to do with the camera angles and the lighting. The movie kind of eventually kind of devolves when I'm saying trying to decide what it's about, it's not that the movie's confused, it's that the movie's telling you a story, and the story isn't explaining to you what it's about, it's letting the story unfold for you. So, you kind of start off and you think like, oh, this is going to be, Willem Dafoe is like crazy and he's going to like try to kill this guy. You kind of don't know where it's going to go. And it's, they're at odds, then they're kind of friendly, it's a mentor situation, then, it's different. It kind of goes back and forth. It seems like a very natural, it seems like Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson actually worked really well together on this, because their relationship to each other and the way that they interact and the way that they view each other in the film all feel very natural, and it really feels like all of that is affected by the movie itself, which is neat when you consider the fact that like they would shoot, certain scenes and then they would go home for the day and then they would have to come back and then get into this sense of being again. And it was pretty seamless. And that was really cool, especially since they're not the only people in the movie. There are a few other people. But for the majority of it, they are the only people we see. And there's elements of, is there something supernatural going on? Is there something mental going on? Is any of this real? And this movie was directed by Robert Eggers. He has directed some other things, I believe. I know I have seen his other work. The Witch is the one that's the most prominent. That gets recommended every Halloween season. I have watched it, and not my cup of tea, but it was a good movie. He did a really good job with it. I have heard people talking about The Northman that came out in 2022. That was also one of his. And he has worked as a production designer. He has done costume design. He's done a lot of different things. Robert Eggers is a very well-rounded man. And he makes interesting movies, and this is one of them. The only reason that I bring up the director, because I don't talk about that unless it's a really big deal. The reason that I bring that up is because this movie had such incredible David Lynch vibes. And because it was shot in black and white, because it is a horror film, it is really difficult to not compare this at least a little bit to Eraserhead. If you have seen Eraserhead, it is a body horror film. It was made in 1977 by David Lynch, who is known for his very, very, what is the word that I want to use? Provoking content. All of his content, all of his films have elicited a lot of feelings. Or a lot of, not necessarily confusion. He's divisive, I guess. Or, I'm trying to think. There's a word that I am trying to think of that I can't really place right now. But anyway, he is known the most for Twin Peaks. He's also known for Eraserhead because it's kind of considered a horror classic at this point. And he's also very, very well known for Mulholland Drive. There's an air of mystery to his work. There is an air of visceral, I think was the word I was looking for. His things are always very visceral. They make you uncomfortable. He's not afraid to kind of push the envelope visually. He's not afraid to show what he wants to show, even if it's grotesque or taboo. And David Lynch, when he wants something to hurt, he makes it hurt as a watcher. And when you introduce this to horror, some really interesting things can happen. And I think we've seen that with the fact that, like, Eraserhead was made in 1977 and we're still talking about it. In fact, one of my good friends just watched it probably 2 or 3 months ago for the first time. And so we're talking 2024, people are still watching this, are still watching this with newly. They're still checking it out. And I think The Lighthouse is going to end up being one of those films. I think it's going to have a sort of staying power in the kind of cult sense. But also, I think it's moved to the forefront, and I think a lot more people have seen it because now it's in memes. And that seems to be the greatest form of advertising today is memes. Like, if you make it funny, you can sell it to somebody. And I think that's actually one of the greatest accomplishments of TikTok is that the majority of TikTok is just people selling you things. And then you leave TikTok and you buy them. So they don't have to do commercials anymore. All they have to do is get an influencer to make a video about it. And then other influencers will make a video about it. And before they know it, they're selling like hotcakes because people are inundated with this content. And they're seeing these products and then they're grabbing them because they're familiar with them. And I think it's cool when we see films that are affected by this. I think one of the very best examples, and I've mentioned it in a previous video, is when the internet made them fix Sonic the Hedgehog because production images leaked of how they were planning to portray Sonic the Hedgehog, and audiences were like, that's horrible and your movie's gonna fail, you need to fix it. And the studio went, oh crap, we should fix this. And they did, and the Sonic movies are great. And they were even able to use the poorly designed original Sonic in the Chip and Dale movie that Disney made a couple years ago and laugh at it that they had originally made this kind of monstrosity and then people called them out on it. And they fixed it. But so the reason that I'm saying that is because it became a meme. And people had an opinion about it and they voiced their opinions about it and the studio actually listened. And so this movie, like I said, I know people who aren't even interested in horror in the very least who have seen this movie because they were like, I don't know, I saw the memes, I just had to check it out. I just wanted to see what it was all about. And that is really cool that we're kind of at that point, but I do think people need to realize that we're all being advertised to constantly. Like, if you see an influencer being like, oh my God, I found this great thing, that's an advertisement. It doesn't say advertisement. They're not being paid for it. They might not even know that's what they're doing, but they're advertising to you. So that's how The Lighthouse was advertised to me. And so, like I said, I had no concept of what I was walking into. And now that I'm past it, I watched this movie and I still have no idea really what I watched. I am no more enlightened now that I have finished it than I was beforehand. But I have to say that I kind of enjoyed the ride. It was very confusing. There was uncomfortable imagery. There are some, there's a lot of sexual imagery in this. It makes a whole lot more sense when you think about how isolated and remote these two men are on this island. And so there's a lot of, sexual imagery. There's a lot of sort of, I don't necessarily want to say there's a lot of violent imagery, but there's imagery that feels threatening. Um, there are some funny moments. There are some dramatic moments. There are some truthful moments or scary moments. And in the end of it, you're not really sure if any of it was real. You're not sure what was real, what wasn't, if any of it was real at all. And I loved that about it. Um, is it my favorite movie of all time? No. Will I watch it again? Probably not, unless I have, like a group of friends who are like, oh, hey, have you seen The Lighthouse? We're thinking about checking it out. I'd be like, check it out with you. Like I'd watch it again with people, but as a movie just to kind of watch on my own, I probably wouldn't bother. But I had said at the beginning of this movie that I think this is a film teacher's dream. And a lot of it is because it shows a lot of technique. It shows a lot of different new kind of ways of filming things, of panning to something blank and then going up to something that's up there, of making your eyes follow certain things, making you focus on certain things. They're using imagery to tell the story, using metaphors, kind of blurring the lines between dream sequences and waking sequences, so it makes you question whether or not you're seeing a dream sequence, if you're seeing a hallucination, if you're seeing somebody imagining things. Those scenes are sort of interwoven, so you're not always entirely sure if did that happen in real life, or was that part of a dream, was that imagined. And so then when everything culminates in the end, you're not really sure what you just saw. And I think that there's a lot of aspects of that that would be great to discuss in a film class, because you can discuss the screenwriting, you can discuss the screen direction, the lighting used, the set being very minimal, and how the set is so prominent but there's not much of it. You can talk about the sort of tasteful way that they did nudity, in some respects, the way that they used lighting to hide certain, areas of the body sometimes, or not. Like I said, I was watching this movie and I was sort of taken back to sitting in my lecture hall chair with that little desk that folds over your seat, taking notes as I'm watching movies like Run Lola Run, or I think it was called Black Dog. That was one of them that we always used to watch. But movies like that, where there's a lot of film elements, there's tracking shots, there's, shaky cam, there's all of those sort of industry things that you can pick out that they used, and then there's other techniques that they used instead. And it would be really, I think this is a great movie to watch with students, obviously at the college level, just to point out different ways that you can use so many things visually. The audio in this film, it's not like they're playing pop music in the background. This is very sea sounds and animal sounds and rushing rain and water, and so the overwhelming sounds of nature and things like that. Those are the predominant sounds, and there's so much to explore in that. And I think some movies are made to be entertaining, and they don't necessarily have to be good or bad. They're just entertaining. Then there are movies that are good, and those are movies that you're going to watch again and again. You're going to enjoy. You're going to recommend them to other people. They're probably going to have high critic scores. They're maybe going to win awards. Those are good movies. You're going to have good movies. Then you have art films. And even though this wasn't produced like an art film, it essentially is an art film, because they were experimenting with different ways to give you the anxiety, to give you the scares. Now, would this be considered traditional horror? I don't necessarily think so, but there are some very Lovecraftian elements to this. that I think lend themselves very nicely to the horror genre. Um, but I don't necessarily think that the horror elements of this film are prominent enough that I would put it in the horror section. I would probably put this movie in drama. Um, I don't even think I would necessarily put it in thriller, because even though there are thrilling moments, you're not necessarily waiting for the thriller conclusion. You're more or less just trying to figure out, where is this movie going? Like, I what's going to happen here? And in that sense, it's a little genre less, because there are moments of things that are kind of funny. There are moments of things that are tragic. There's moments of things that are hopeful, and there are moments of things that are hopeless. And then there are things that are anxious and scary and uncomfortable. And when you put them all together, you get this movie that is worth watching at least once, especially if you have an interest in cinema. Um, and I say that as there's a pretty big difference between watching a movie and watching a film. And people more pretentious than me can, condescend about that all day. But this is a film, it's not a movie. And I think that's an important distinction to make, because this is a cinema experience. It's not watching a movie. And so if you're looking for a cinema experience, if you're looking for a film experience, or maybe you're interested in filmmaking techniques, or, you are interested in, the more technical aspects of film, I think this is great. If you're looking for a horror movie that's going to scare you, I don't think this is it. I think you're going to end up at the end of this and be like, that was just bizarre. I don't really know how to review that. And there's nothing bad about that. I think it's definitely worth checking out. But I definitely think that the feelings and the thoughts on this are going to be very polarizing for anybody who does watch it or who has watched it. And I would love to hear what you have to say about this. It was different. And I think that there's a lot that can be discussed about it, and I would love to hear your thoughts. So, that being said, I will see you in the next one. Take care.